Welcome and welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. Here at Cafe Oleh with Nefesh B'Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need in Israel to succeed, whether that's reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, flirting, dating, complaining, everything you do in your native language in your country of origin, but here in Israel in modern Hebrew. As always, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. You can always be in touch with us by email at nbn, at hebrew at nbn.org.il. You can, if you're joining us live on Zoom, you can write to us with any topic requests you might have in the chat. We'll be checking the chat transcript after this class. We'll only be looking at the Q&A for questions related to the specific class we're talking about, but any questions, comments, concerns, you can email us. You can write us live on chat. You can also look at all of our previous lessons. They're up on YouTube, just as a friendly reminder, because we've been off for the last few weeks because of the holiday Pesach. This is what our YouTube channel looks like, folks. If you don't know YouTube, it's youtube.com. Simply type in Cafe Oleh. You'll see a playlist. When you first check it, click on view full playlist. You will see 117 videos, all of our previous sessions. The last, I would say 20 to 30 of them have the attached spreadsheet vocabulary. You'll see we're up to more than 17,000 views. This is amazing. We're Nefesh B'Nefesh's largest channel, also its most popular. Keep watching, keep rewatching our lessons. They're there for your convenience to watch at any time. Okay. Some extra housekeeping before we get started with this week and next week, because these 2 weeks are what we call we have a lot of different names for them in Israeli society. One of them is Yemei Tkuma, the days of uh, rebuilding, of coming back together, because we start with, after celebrating our freedom with Pesach, we go into Yom HaShoah, which we just finished, Israel Holocaust Memorial Day, which takes place on the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Next week will be Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day, which immediately goes into Yom Haatzmaut, Israel's Independence Day. I don't need to impress upon any of you the importance, the meaning, the significance, the emotion that goes into all of these holidays in general, especially this year. It's going to be a difficult period. It already is a difficult period for many of us. We're all weathering this together in a way we've never had to before. When we talk about Memorial Day next week, we've never collectively mourned in a way that we're going to be, and we already have been for the last 7 months. That's a big deal. And as such, we also don't know what Yom Haatzmaut, Independence Day, is going to look like next week. We literally don't know. Not many places have made a lot of plans. A lot of the festivities have been toned down, if not canceled altogether. What we're going to do this week and next week is as follows. This week, we're going to connect Yom HaShoah and the importance of the Hebrew words that have to do with memory and remembrance with another important national event that takes place this week, which I'll explain in a second. And next week, we're going to meet at an early time. Don't worry, I'll remind you again at the end of this class, but we're going to meet at 6 p.m. Israel time next week, which is 11 a.m. East Coast US time, so that we can still be together a little bit for Yom HaZikaron. And for those who have a tekes, a ceremony to go to, that often takes place right at the moment Yom HaZikaron turns into Yom Haatzmaut, we want to be sure that you're able to participate. So we'll let you know that in advance. We'll send out a link in advance. Don't worry about forgetting. You won't forget. Don't worry about remembering either, because we'll make sure you remember, hence the topic of tonight's class. But just want to put that in your heads. We'll talk about that again at the end of this class when we talk about not just next week's class, but also this and next week's class conversation, which continues on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. So let's get started with today. Today, like I said, is the end of Yom HaShoah. We're going to look at an important shoresh, an important root in Hebrew that has to do with our memory, because memory connects us not just to the Shoah, but to Jewish identity in general. And we're going to make a transition, because Israel is always about transitions. Just like next week, we have the very difficult transition between our national day of mourning to our national day of independence. We're also celebrating this week. We've commemorated Yom HaShoah and we're being done with that. And this week we're getting prepared for another national event, albeit a more joyous one normally, which is called Eurovision. Eurovision, very quickly, especially for the North Americans here, because you've heard of this, you've probably maybe even seen it, but you don't get to participate in it. Eurovision is an annual contest put on by the European Broadcasting Union. Israel has participated since 1972. Israel is a part of the European Broadcasting Union, not just being a member, but because it includes all the territory in and around the Mediterranean Sea. We are definitely on the Mediterranean, so we are a member of it. That's how we get to participate. But also, it comes after decades of being boycotted and being shut out of our natural territorial being here in the Middle East, in Asia, we're not usually able to be part of regional participatory things. Europe is not so far away, despite our ongoing issues and history with Europe. We are a proud member of European Broadcasting Union because Eurovision was all about post-World War II, a friendly way that countries could compete with each other over who had the best song. It's a very simple contest, no more than 3-minute songs, no more than 6 people on stage. It has since changed from being only in your country's official language to any language you want. It's no longer a live orchestra, it's playback, but it's live singing. The point, though, is why are we talking about Eurovision? Because it's a chance for Israel to display one of its most important aspects in its now almost 76 years, and even before that, thousands of years before that, is the power of music. Okay, music is a really important part of Jewish identity. It's a very important part of Israeli identity. And we're going to look at an entry of Israel that we've looked at before in years past, but it's always good to be reminded. This one has specific connection with Yom HaShoah from 1983, if I'm not mistaken, is the year. And we'll go into that in a little bit, but I just want to preface that also that this year, if you haven't heard the song by Eden Golan, Hurricane, there is one last line in it in Hebrew, but it is in English. She is performing in the first semifinal on Thursday. If she gets in, she's in the final Saturday night. It is a big deal. When we get to the music part, I'm going to make this comment again, but I'm going to make it now because we've had these issues in the past. Folks, this is an educational program, and we're happy to provide it for you for free, but this is an educational program. If you treat it as entertainment, that's your own issue. I know that some people have expressed discomfort in listening to music during the period between Pesach and Shavuot called the Omer, HaOmer, or Sfirat HaOmer, counting of the Omer. Many observant Jews will not listen to music for entertainment purposes during that period. However, this is an educational program. So when we get to the point after we go through the lyrics together in Hebrew, if you don't want to listen to the music, I will make sure you know when to mute your computers and then come back together. But remember, this is Eurovision, so the song is only 3 minutes. 3 minutes, you'll be on mute, and then we'll come back to us. Okay, so first let's start with remembrance. As always, you are welcome to screenshot old school pen and paper. You'll also receive a copy of this spreadsheet along with the lyrics we're going to go through in a little bit. So when we talk about memory and remembrance in Hebrew, we're almost always using the same shoresh. And this shoresh, combination of 3 letters, is Zain Chaf Resh. Remember, we talk about this all the time. All Hebrew words are created with 2 things. One is the shoresh, 3 letters, sometimes 2, sometimes 4, that have their own general meaning. And then the form. If it's a verb, we call it a binyan. If it's a noun or an adjective, we call it a mishkal. Those 2 have their own meaning, right? So when we combine those 2 forces to create a milah, word, they come with their own meanings together to come together. And that's exactly what we're going to look at now. How does this root that has to do with memory manifest itself throughout modern Hebrew? Zain Chaf Resh. First off, let's look at a verb that all of us on this, almost all of us, I'm sure, on this call, especially those of us who have studied at least through level Aleph in Ulpan or anywhere else you've learned modern Hebrew formally, have probably learned this verb. lizkor. Lizkor, 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 however you pronounce the letter resh, simply means to remember. What they often don't teach you in early level Hebrew is a very important thing I'm going to teach you right now. And this took me years and years, basically until I made Aliyah, to learn this. The verb lizkor does mean to remember, but in modern Hebrew, you will only hear it in the present and future tenses. Only. Okay? This isn't about you'll use it. This is about you'll hear it, and therefore you'll use it. Remember, communication is not just speaking, it's also listening. When you listen to native Hebrew speakers speak modern Hebrew, you will only hear this verb in the present tense. Ani zocher, ata zocher, at zocheret, anachnu zochrim, aten zochot, and so forth. Or in the future tense. Ezkor, tizkor, tizkeri, yizkor, nizkor, tizkeru, yizkeru. Okay. In fact, if you were watching the state ceremonies last night and today, you probably heard the word yizkor, right? Yizkor is the beginning of the traditional of the state memorial prayer that we say both on specifically on Yom HaShoah and on Yom HaZikaron. Yizkor Am Yisrael, may the nation of Israel, the people of Israel, remember. Okay, future tense, or in the present tense. We do not hear this verb, and therefore we do not use this verb in modern Hebrew in the past tense. Instead, we're going to use the next verb in the past tense. This is the verb lehizacher. Lehizacher is to be reminded or to recall. Okay. And this verb is the equivalent of I remembered, is how we use it in modern Hebrew. So for example, I want to say um, I remembered you from the party. Nizkalti becha meha mesiba. That's how I'm going to use this verb. It's lehizacher. In present tense, we can use it. Nizkar, nizkeret, nizkerim, nizkerot. Remember, I'm not going to conjugate all these verbs for you. I'm just demonstrating it here. We have that great resource, pe'alim.com. And in the past tense, nizkalti, nizkalta, nizkalt, nizkal, nizkera, and so forth. Okay. The point, though, is this verb is going to be used as if we were saying I remembered, right? So it's I was reminded or I recalled. Okay, if we want to literally translate it back into English, but this is the verb we use. We want to say to remember in the past tense. Nizkalti be. Also important, not just which tenses we use these verbs in, but also, right? Also that, sorry, just one second. Also, what is the preposition or the article that comes right after it? Okay. So in the case of liskol is almost always followed by et. Okay, meaning it's followed by a direct object. Ani zocher otcha. I remember you. Okay. That's how we would use this verb. And likewise in the future tense. Lehizacher is followed by the preposition be, the prefix be. Niskalti becha. I recalled you. I remembered you. Okay, there's a very well-known and actually beautiful song, Mizrahi song, by a very famous Israeli singer, Zohar Gov, and it's Nizkar ani b'mabatech. I recall your face. I recall your glance. Mabat is both view, but it's also like your face, your vision. Okay. Nizkar ani b'mabatech. It's a beautiful line. But again, it's followed by the prepositional suffix, prefix be. Okay. And then thirdly, we have the verb lahazkir. Lizkor is, for those of you slightly more advanced, that is binyan pa'al. Lehizacher nif'al. This is the causative form, hif'il, to cause to remember. How do you say in proper English, I cause someone or something to remember someone or something? To remind. Lazkir is to remind. Okay. And this verb also we only use in the present and future tenses. Okay. So if you want to say, Ani mazkir lecha shenipagesh ha'erev. I'm reminding you that we'll meet this evening. That's how you're going to use this verb. And you're going to use it with the prepositional prefix le. Maskir le. I remind to you, literally, or I remind for you. Okay? So we have three verbs here. Lizkor, to remember, which we use in the present and future tenses only. Lehizacher, which we use in the past and present. And lahazkir, present and future tenses. Let's look at some words now. We just looked at verbs. Let's look at some words, nouns that use the same root, zayin, chaf, resh. First off is zikaron, right? Zikaron is the most important one. You hear this all the time. Actually, the name of Yom HaShoah is Yom HaZikaron LaShoah ULaGvura, the Memorial Day of the Shoah and Gvura. Gvura can be translated as bravery or courage. Again, remembering that Israel chose the day of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising as the anniversary. The International Holocaust Memorial Day is on the day that the Soviet Red Army liberated Auschwitz, right? The juxtaposition of foreign entity, quote unquote, liberating us versus ourselves liberating us. Obviously, the latter strikes a stronger chord with Zionism and Israel. Therefore, that's Yom HaZikaron LaShoah ULeGvura, the Memorial Day for the Shoah and of bravery, meaning during the Shoah. Okay, that's the official name of it. We simply say Yom HaShoah. Yom HaShoah VaGvura is often how it's truncated, but it is technically Yom HaZikaron LaShoah Gvura. Next week is an even longer name, Yom HaZikaron LaChalalei Ma'achot Yisrael U'Pe'ulot HaIva, the Memorial Day of those who've fallen in Israel's battles and in terror attacks. Okay, Zikaron simply means memory. It does not mean memorial, even though we're using it. We're using it as a day of memory, Yom HaZikaron. In English, we translate that as Memorial Day, but in Hebrew, we're translating in the memory of, recalling those people. Okay? Zikaron is simply memory. It's the memory in your head. It's the memory in your phone or in your mobile devices, right? If you're looking for a certain amount of memory space in buying a new phone or a computer, you're going to see listed on it in Hebrew, zikaron. Then it'll say however many gigabytes or megabytes or tetrabytes, whatever you're looking for. Okay. Now, an actual memorial in terms of a ceremony, that's a different word. That is the word azkara. Azkara in modern Hebrew is the equivalent in Ashkenazi Hebrew to Yahrzeit, right? Yahrzeit is Yiddish. Yar in German is year. Zeit is time. Azkara is what we call the memorial of someone's passing in modern Hebrew. You'll say Azkara or Yom Azkara shel so-and-so. Okay, but an Azkara is the actual physical memorial, usually in terms of time, right? So a Yahrzeit, the anniversary of someone's passing is an Azkara. Okay. Tizkoret, that thing that hopefully pops up if you use Google Calendar or tasks or whatever you use to remind yourself of things. The actual reminder is called a tizkoret, coming from the same exact root. Okay, tizkoret. Also coming from this root is the word souvenir, right? Because what is a souvenir? It reminds you of somewhere or something you've done. So whenever time you look at it, you'll be reminded of it. And the reverse, they sell it to you so you're reminded of that place. Mazkeret, souvenir. And finally, with this root, we get the words that related to our verb to remind. What is someone or something that reminds you to do something? In Hebrew, we take that to be a secretary, right? A mazkir or mazkira, mazkir male secretary, mazkira female secretary, is the person who reminds you to do something. That's how we come up with the word secretary in Hebrew. I think that's pretty right on the dot. And then finally, a word that may not be so familiar to those of you from more Western economies, but is nonetheless important, mazkirut. Mazkirut is a secretariat. That could be the academic secretariat of a university. That could be the secretariat of a kibbutz. That could be Mazkal Ha'um, the Mazkir HaKlali Shel Ha'um, the Secretary General of the United Nations. But Mazkirut is a secretariat. It's the bureaucratic entity that is comprised of secretaries. If that makes sense. If it doesn't, don't worry. It's usually a good sign you grew up in a capitalist system. If you don't know the word maskirot, don't worry. If you don't know it, you're not going to hear it very often in modern Hebrew, except in the context of academic buildings, usually big bureaucracies, or kibbutzim and moshavim. Okay, so multiple options here, multiple ways that we see the verb, excuse me, the shoresh, zayin chaf resh, being used throughout modern Hebrew, including three verbs, and more importantly, when to use these verbs. I'm promising you, I never learned lihizacher until I was in Israel, having to use Hebrew on a regular basis. I never learned this verb formally. So one of the many ways you're welcome in what we provide here at Cafe Oleh. Okay, so this is the first half of today's class. I then want to transition, just like we do all the time in not only Israeli society, but in Jewish tradition, miyagon lesimcha, from despair to joy, right? It's the reason why we break a plate or a glass, more specifically. Originally it was a plate, now it's a glass. At a wedding, it's the reason why we go from Yom HaZikaron to Yom Haatzmaut so sharply next week. I want to talk about that other thing, Eurovision, this week. And I talk about Eurovision because, again, song is really important in Israeli society. And I'm going to show you, we're going to go through the lyrics together of one of Israel's entries into it, but also to just talk about how important song is. We have a tradition in modern Israel called Shira B'tzibur. Shira is singing, B'tzibur in public, and it's the idea of a communal sing-along, sitting around a campfire or in front of a projector with the words projected onto it. Whatever it is, there's a notion of singing songs together, bringing people together, knowing the same lyrics, and whether they're happy songs or sad songs, that's a very cathartic moment in Israeli society. You will see in good times and bad. On Yom HaZikaron, it's a tradition to sing these sad songs together, often what are called Shirei Eretz Yisrael, the songs of the land of Israel, sort of classic canonical songs that make up Israel, as well as on happy days, right? Both are there. Also important because shir and shira in Hebrew is very important. Shir is usually referring to a song, whereas shira is referring to poetry. They're very much intertwined in Jewish tradition, in the Hebrew language, in Israeli society. And then when we talk about both of these, they're intertwined. So whether you listen to them or not, the words are meant to be lyrical. We don't just say the words to a song are lyrics. They're meant to be lyrical. They have a meter, they have a pitch to them, they have a larger poetic meaning to them. And in modern Israeli society, communal sing-alongs are really important. It's the reason why songs are very important. It's the reason why we commemorate good times and bad times with song. If you watched any of the state ceremonies last night for Yom HaShoah, they were all accompanied by song, whether they're modern Israeli songs, whether they're songs during that period. In Jewish history, it doesn't matter. We use music all the time. The song we're going to look at right now are the lyrics. I told you I'd tell you when the music comes on. It's not coming on yet. We're going to look at the lyrics to Israel's 1983 entry into Eurovision. A lot of Israel's entries into it not only became international hits, they became national hits. You've recognized these songs. And if you don't believe me how important Eurovision is, especially to my fellow Americans, where do you think the song Volare came from? If you think that's a 100, 200-year-old Italian folk tune that Italian immigrants brought to the United States, you are very much incorrect. That was Italy's entry into Eurovision, I believe, in the 1950s. That's it. That's how old the song is. And yet it's so popular and so well known in American society. That's the power of Eurovision. Hundreds of millions of people watch it. It's kitschy, it's campy, it's patriotic, it's nationalist, but it also has a lot of culture that's created out of it. And that's where Israel often thrives on an international level, is the soft diplomacy, is the cultural diplomacy through music. The amount of music from Israel that's not only heard worldwide, but that's even been translated into other languages is really important. And that used to be the first few decades of Eurovision. The song we're about to hear actually has been translated into multiple languages as well. But we're going to first read and go through the Hebrew words together. So, like I said, this is Israel's entry in 1983. Now, why is this important? It's important because this is Israel entry. It came in second place. It actually only lost because Israel's votes went to the winner, Luxembourg. So it was entirely, quote unquote, our fault that we didn't win that year because it was very close in the voting. And you vote as a citizens of a country as well as the jury that's created by your country in voting for another country. You can't vote for yourself. That year, Israel came in second, 1983. It's also ironic this year that Luxembourg, after being many years not participating in Eurovision, actually has an Israeli participating on its behalf, representing it on its behalf. We're looking at 1983. 1983, the song is Chai. It is written by Ehud Manor. In terms of the most important songwriters in Israel, in Israeli society, Ehud Manor is easily in the top five, if not the top three. He has written many, many, many hits, and very important songwriter in Israel. And the music was written by Avi Toledano, also a very popular musician. He, in fact, represented Israel the year prior in Eurovision with the song Hora, also written by a very famous lyricist in Israel. Also came in second place. So this was riding high. Israel won, remember, in 1977, 78 and 79. And this is 1983 already. So we were already really riding high in terms of public opinion. These songs were all sung in Hebrew. So if you don't believe that world opinion and world uh, ears, the global ears have a place for Hebrew, this song proves you wrong. This song was sung by Ofra Haza. Ofra Haza um, was already became a global hit with this song. She came a further global hit later in the 80s with her rendition of Imni Nalu, which is a traditional piyut religious poem written by a Yemenite rabbi. She herself comes from a Yemenite background. Became a worldwide hit as it was mixed to a dance beat. Ofra Haza, easily one of Israel's most recognizable, most famous and popular singers, unfortunately died in 2000. But this was a big deal. We're going to look at the words. Also keep in mind, this is 1983 in Munich, West Germany, coming in second place, singing in Hebrew. The symbolism wasn't lost on the songwriters or Ofra Haza, even though she's not from European descent, but representing Israel 11 years after Black September, right? 11 years after the Munich massacre, um, in West Germany, still in the bastion, southern Germany, where Nazism had its roots. And here she is singing a song, Chai, alive. Let's look at the lyrics together. Shim'u achai ani od chai. Listen, my brothers, ani od chai. I am still alive. Again, what's so amazing about modern Israeli music is how much it's interwoven with our Jewish identity. It has to be because it's in Hebrew. It's the reason why we're teaching Hebrew here. It's the reason why we use Hebrew as our national language. It's interconnected with our identity. Anyone who's listening to this song and they heard the very first word is Shim'u, in modern Hebrew, as a native Hebrew speaker, will know exactly what that connotation is. I'm sure many of you on this call do as well. It's the Shema, right? That foundational part of our faith as Jews. And here she's saying it as well on a global stage in the plural. Instead of Shema, Shim'u. It's the plural imperative command form. Shim'u achai. Listen, hear, O my brothers. Ani od chai. I am still alive. Again, 1983 in Munich, folks. This isn't, I'm not just teaching this as a random thing because this is a great song. Listen to the power of the words in its context. Ushte enai od nisaot laor. Ushte enai, and my two eyes, Od nisaot laor are carried up to the light or are lifted up to the light. Lehi nasa is to be carried up or to be carried, but it's usually to be lifted up as well. Okay, so, and my two eyes are still lifted up to the light. Rabim chochai, ach gam prachai. Choach or chochim are thorns, prachim are flowers. You notice all the endings of these words are in the I, right? Many of these, all these, not many, most of these lines will end in the word I, not just because I typically at the end of a word, when it's a suffix, is the first person plural. My something plural, right? Achai, my brothers. Ushte enai, my eyes. Okay, Rabim chochai, many are my thorns. Chochim are thorns. Chochai, my thorns. Ach gam prachai, but also my flowers. It's all rhyming with chai. Chai is the center of the song, being alive. Ulefanai, and before me, shanim rabot mispor, and before me are countless years. Not only am I alive and I'm still alive, I will continue to be alive. Ani shoel umitpalel, I ask and I pray. Tov shelo avda od hatikva. Again, for a native Hebrew speaker to hear this song on a global stage, big flashing lights are going off after we heard Shim'u Achai. That was the first one, right? That it's just like Shema Yisrael. It's getting our attention. It's bringing us in. This should be a big flashing light for all of us who get these words. Tov shelo avda od hatikva. Where have we heard these words before? In Hatikva, Israel's national anthem. Od lo avda tikvatenu, as we sing in Hatikva. Our hope is not yet lost. Tov shelo avda od hatikva. It's good that our hope is not yet lost in what is otherwise a 3-minute pop song. Okay, big flashing lights and symbolism going on here. Over mizmor midor ledor. A song passes from generation to generation. What's important here is that we're using the word mizmor. We're not using the word shir. We're not using another word that we use in modern Hebrew for song, pismon, right? A pismon is usually a more light-hearted song. Mizmor. Mizmor also should be a flashing light for those of us who know not just Hebrew, but have some Jewish education behind us. Mizmor is the word that we use in the Tanakh, in the Bible, right? Mizmor le David, a song or a psalm of King David, right? Mizmor connects us back to the Bible, foundation of our language here. Over mizmor midor ledor. A song passes from generation to generation. It's not just any song, though, because mizmor has more of a connotation for those who speak Hebrew than just translating it as a song. Kema'ayan me'az ve'ad olam. Kema'ayan, as a spring. Me'az ve'ad olam. Me'az ve'ad olam is an expression. Me'az literally can be translated as since. But when we say me'az ve'ad olam, it's meaning forever, from now until forever, or from past to future. Okay? And then here comes, it repeats, ani shoel umitpalel, tov shelo avda od hatikva, and then here comes the chorus. Chai, 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 ken ani od chai. Alive, alive, alive. Yes, I'm still alive. זה השיר שסבא שר אתמול לאבא והיום אני. This is the song that Saba, grandfather, grandpa sang yesterday, le'aba, to dad, והיום אני, and now it's my turn to sing it. Okay? חי, 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 עם ישראל חי. 1983 in Munich, West Germany, Ofra Haza gets on the stage and sings Am Yisrael Chai in the campiest, hitchiest moment possible in the calendar year. She sings Am Yisrael Chai in 1983. The Nation of Israel lives. And then repeats, Ze ashir shesaba shar etmol le'aba vehayom ani. Okay. One last bit. Homim yamai velelotai. Many are my days, yamai. Remember that ending I told you about, that suffix I. It's yom is a day, yamim days, yamai my days, velelotai. Leilot are nights, leilotai my nights. Many are my days and my nights. Uvishamai amud ha'esh odkam. Again, in a modern Hebrew, also a Jewish and an Israeli context, big red, big light is flashing here. Uvishamai, and in my skies, amud ha'esh odkam. Amud is a pillar. Amud Ha'esh is a pillar of fire. Odkam still stands. Those of you who know your Tanakh or remember what we just celebrated Pesach, you'll remember that an Amud Esh or Amud Ha'esh, the pillar of fire, is what followed and guarded Bnei Israel, the nation of Israel, when they left Egypt and were wandering in the desert. Okay, Amud Ha'esh is also the name of a very important documentary in Israel. It was the first major documentary created in Israeli society, documenting the rise of Zionism and the foundation of the state of Israel. It's a very important series in Israeli cultural, in Israeli identity and Israeli culture and Israeli cultural literacy. It's shown, it used to be shown regularly on TV. You can find all the episodes both on YouTube as well as on its original producer, Khan's website. It was produced by Channel 1. That's all there was at the time in the 80s. Amud Ha'esh, Pillar of Fire, is the name of the series. Amud Ha'esh is also known, those of you who watched the Tekes, the ceremony last night at Yad Vashem, whether live or recorded, the music they played in between the different torch bearers, the six different survivors who lit a torch in memory of the 6 million who were murdered, the music that was playing in the background is the theme song to this documentary. It's not a song in that it's music. It's so intertwined in Israeli identity, this idea of Amud Ha'esh, the pillar of fire, the thing that protects us, be it divine or however you want to see it. That's the name of the series. That's the name of this music, and that it plays a role even in national ceremonies. You'll recognize it immediately when you watch the series. It's the opening credit music. Amud Ha'esh, Pillar of Fire. Highly recommend all of you watching it, especially in these days leading up to Yom Haatzmaut and Yom Haatzmaut. But again, an Israeli hearing this on international TV would immediately get the connotation, no matter how religiously observant they were. And then finally, the last few lines. Ashir blidai, I shall sing endlessly, right? Ashir, I will sing, blidai, without ending, without enough, literally translates to without enough, without ending, endlessly. Efros yadai, I will spread out my hands. Leyedidai, to my friends, asher me'ever yam, to my friends whom are beyond the sea. Right? She's as much talking about the European audience as she is to Jews around the world. Ashir blidai ve'efros yadai leyedidai asher me'ever layam. I shall sing endlessly. I shall spread out my hands to my friends whom are beyond the sea. And then finally, again, it repeats the chorus. As kol lechai, lechol orchai. So here's to life, lechol orchai, to all my guests. Ulevanai hamivakshim lachzol. Remember, this is Israel representing itself on an international level. So, of course, there has to be a level of Zionism and thus aliyah in it. Ulevanai. So here's to life and to all my guests. Ulevanai, and to all my children, i.e., the children of Israel. Hamivakshim lachzol. Hamivakshim lachzol, whom are asking to return. If you remember a few weeks ago, we talked about one of my favorite parts of speech, participles. Mivakshim is a participle here, folks. Those who are requesting, those who are asking to return. Where to return? Eretz Israel, the land of Israel. Okay, she's calling out as much to a larger audience, specifically to Jews. Ulevanai hamivakshim lachzor. So here's to life to all, especially to all my fellow Jews whom are asking to return. The chorus returns. Again, this is an important song, folks, not just because it's heard all the time in Israel and it's considered a very patriotic song. This was performed on a global stage to complete strangers in Hebrew in 1983, and it came in second place. Second place. And the only reason it lost is because Israel happened to vote for the person who was its biggest competition at the time. Total fluke. It could have won. It was then translated into multiple languages. As much as that's pretty impressive that this song was translated, its Hebrew is no less, I think, even more important than any translation. Okay, we're going to watch it. Those of you who are inclined not to listen to music, even in an educational context, this is your chance to mute. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to watch it. I want you to pay attention. Besides the kitchen campiness, I want you to pay attention to the announcer. It's in German and in French. German because it takes place in Munich. French because all the announcements in Eurovision are in French and English. And I want you to pay attention to what Ofra Haza and the backup dancers and singers are wearing. Okay? And otherwise enjoy, or not enjoy, learn how this song plays out on a global stage in 1983, Munich, West Germany. Just 1 second. Okay, but again, folks, this is your, there we go. This is your reminder, if you do not want to listen to music, to please mute yourself, to mute the screen now, as I will be playing music by a female. Okay, let's do that. Just so you can hear, because it's one thing to hear poetry, it's another thing, to read poetry, it's another thing to listen to it. So let's listen to it together.
Und die Interpretin, the performing artist, interprétée par Ofra Haza.
ושתי עיניי עוד נישאות לאור רבים חוכי אך גם פרחי ולפניי שנים רבות מספור אני שואל ומתפלל טוב שלא עבדה אותה תקווה עובר מזמור מדור לדור כמעיין מאז ועד עולם אני שואל ומתפלל טוב שלא עבדה אותה תקווה חי 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 כן אני עוד חי זה השיר שסבא שר כמו לאבא והיום אני עוד חי 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 עם ישראל חי זה השיר שסבא שר כמו לאבא והיום אני הונים ימיי ולילותיי ובשמי עמוד האש עוד קם אשיר בלי די אפרוס ידיי לידידיי אשר מעבר ים אני שואל ומתפלל טוב שלא עבדה אותה תקווה חי 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 כן אני עוד חי זה השיר שסבא שר כמו לאבא והיום אני עוד חי 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 עם ישראל חי זה השיר שסבא שר כמו לאבא והיום אני שמועי חי אני עוד חי ושתי עיניי עוד נישאות לאור אז כל לחי לכל אור חי ולבניי המבקשים לחזור אני שואל ומתפלל טוב שלא עבדה אותה תקווה לאבא, שר אתמול לאבא, והיום אני
En vrolijk als altijd zong de vertegenwoordiging van Israël het liedje over.
Right, 3 minutes. Israel has to produce a original song for an international song contest. This is a song they create with the lyrics that we went through. And again, I asked you to look at what they were wearing. It's no coincidence. All this was planned on purpose. They understood the Israeli production team, both who was Ofra Haza, the songwriters Ehud Manor and Avi Toledano, and the designer of the outfits. They knew they had this moment on a world stage. They created something that is still memorable to this day, locally and internationally. You notice what they were wearing? If you said the color yellow, you were correct. They purposely wore yellow. It was a very famous fashion designer, Israeli fashion designer, who created their outfits, specifically picking yellow because it is West Germany in Munich. They wanted to be sure to reappropriate the color yellow from the Tlai Tzahov, the yellow star that Jews were forced to wear during Nazi Germany, into something of pride as they're singing Am Yisrael Chai on a global stage. The song has a lot of power behind it. It's noteworthy again in transitioning from Yom HaShoah to the rest of this week and next week to Eurovision this week, knowing everything that's going on in the world, especially with regards to anti-Semitism and so forth, and Israel's entry being pushed around and being told they had to change their lyrics, and this year's lyrics being no less impactful and powerful. Talking about October 7th without talking about October 7th and who we are, and even including some Hebrew, it's still favored to get into the top 10 in the final. But some history is important, not just to know our role in Eurovision, which takes place this week, but the role of music and its power as therapy in good times and bad in Israeli society. With that, let's get to some of your questions. Remember, if you have questions, please write them in the Q&A, not in the chat. I'll look at the chat after class, but the Q&A, and then I will be sure to finish in time to tell you about next week's class, as well as our conversation classes coming up. If you say, I remembered her from the party, is it still b'mesiba or meha mesiba? Great question. Ani niskalti ba meha mesiba. Because you remember her. It's not you're remembering the party. If you want to say, I remembered the party, niskalti ba mesiba. I remembered the party. If you want to say, I remembered her from the party, niskalti ba meha mesiba. Okay, let me say that slowly just so you get it. Nizkarti or nizkarti is I remembered. Remember, use that verb to do remember in the past. I remembered. Nizkarti. If you simply want to say I remembered her, nizkarti ba. Bet hey. Nizkarti ba mesiba. I remembered the party. If I want to say I remembered her from the party, niskalti ba me hamesiba, from the party. Great question. Would you use the preposition be if you said I remembered to go to the store? Niskalti be lalechet la makolet. Yes, you would. Niskalti be followed by the infinitive. Niskalti בללכת למכולת. Now you will hear people say נזכרתי ללכת למסיבה or למכולת, excuse me, without using the preposition be, but it is supposed to be used before immediately following the verb להיזכר be. Can you use nif'al future of להיזכר? In modern Hebrew, we don't use it. In biblical and prayer Hebrew, you do. Those of you who are thinking of, for example, the Yamim Noraim, the High Holy Days, there is one of the things we sing aloud during the longer form of the Amidah, Sefer Chaim, Bracha v'shalom b'parnasa tova, nizacher v'nikatev, right? But that's not modern Hebrew. Prayer Hebrew is usually not modern Hebrew. In prayer Hebrew, yes, you can say the future tense nif'al, we will be remembered. We don't use that verb very often in modern Hebrew. We will be remembered. There aren't many times you're going to say we will be remembered. You'll say things more in Hebrew like we will be memorialized, right? We'll use a different verb, but we're not talking about to be remembered in the future. But certainly in biblical Hebrew, in prayer Hebrew, liturgical Hebrew, we do have examples of that. Does lehizacher have a dagesh in the kuf? It sounds like you were saying it as kuf. So listen, lehizacher, in its infinitive form, it's chaf, lehizacher. But if I'm saying it in the present tense, ani nizkar. Nizkar, nizkeret, nizkerim, nizkerot. Also, by the way, in the past tense, it's with a kaf. Nizkarti, nizkarta, nizkart, and so forth. Okay? Great question. Could Amuda Esh also be symbolic of the pillar of smoke in Auschwitz? Absolutely. Look, Amuda Esh is a powerful symbol, pillar of fire in all sorts of connotations. Pillar of fire in the Tanakh, pillar of fire, certainly thinking about the Shoah, and also thinking about pillar of fire as a source of strength after the Shoah. So yes, it is poetry, song, music is poetry and art for a reason. It's open to interpretation, but it is definitely connected one with the other. And also, by the way, as someone just said, the Nil Tamid, eternal flame. Right? Can I play Hurricane? If we have time, absolutely. Personally, I tear up every time I hear Hurricane. It's a very powerful song with or without the Hebrew, especially the music video, because if you watch the music video, in the context of October 7th, you get it. That is different than what's going to be the live production that you'll see this Thursday evening, and God willing, also Saturday night. But if we have some extra time at the end, I absolutely will play it for those who want to stick around. Is mazkil also used in the present tense for I remember? No. Mazkil means I remind. Ani mazkil lecha shenifkashim Gam beyom revi'i. I remind you, or I am reminding you that we also meet on Wednesdays for Cafe Oleh conversations. See, that's how we use that verb. Prior to Israel's entrance into Eurovision from 1960 to 1980s, we had a yearly song festival. Great point. I meant to say that. Israel has such a strong connection with that Shira B'tzibur communal singing that we've had traditions of song festivals even before entering Eurovision, even before Eurovision existed. If you think of all, and I put in the spreadsheet here, the names of several of those song contests that we've had throughout the years. One was called Sorry, folks, we got disconnected for some reason. Let me share that with you again. There we go. Okay, there we go. So answering that question about previous song festivals, yes. Festival HaZemer HaIvri, the Hebrew Song Festival, was a long-running contest before Israel joined the Eurovision, and then it became the contest to decide which Israeli would represent Israel on an international level. We then turned it into what we call the Kdam Eurovision, the pre-Eurovision concert. Then we had a whole bunch of reality shows. Before reality shows existed in Israel or in the world, we had them here. The first one was called Kochav Nolad, The Star is Born. that came out of the Second Intifada, where we had a TV show where every week all it was the audience singing along. This was predated by all sorts of other sing-alongs on TV, but we had one called Lo Mafsikim Lashir, We Won't Stop Singing. Kochav Nolad, A Star is Born. The newest one is called HaKochav Haba, The Next Star. But yes, Israel has many different uh, TV shows, reality shows, and contests to get us into Eurovision. Whether Eurovision exists or not, we're going to keep singing, as the name of that previous show was. Great question. Great comment, rather. Okay, a few more questions. If I said Zacharti for I remembered, would I be wrong, not understood? Look, you would be understood, but it's not used in modern Hebrew. That's the point I'm trying to make. Just because you'll be understood, it's understanding how native Hebrew speakers use the language. So if you say Zacharti, people will recognize that Hebrew is not your first language. They'll totally understand you. They'll respect you because they know you're learning the language, and they'll know your context probably comes from a religious one, but it's Niskalti in modern Hebrew. Totally all right if you make it. If you say it, people will understand you nonetheless. Shanim rabot mispor. Mispor is an expression. We don't use the word mispor, countless, very often. But again, we're talking about poetic Hebrew. It's not necessarily just modern Hebrew, it's poetic Hebrew. There's a poetic license also that comes with it. If you remind me of something, is it correct to say ani zocheret? That's a great question. I remind you of something, I would say, if someone reminds me of something, I would say, ken ani zocher, or ken niskalti. I remembered it, meaning like I just remembered it. That's how you would use it. Great question. Okay, two bits of homework. So first off, Toda rabba, thank you all for joining. Wednesday's class, if you have not joined us already for conversations, we still have room for you. Wednesday at 8 p.m., we are joining again for Cafe Oleh Conversations, where we break you up to practice the topics we go over on Monday. This week, we're going to talk about how do you recommend and talk about music. This is going to review a previous class we did about expressing an opinion. Those of you who sign up in advance, meaning by tomorrow, you'll not only get a reminder, you'll get an extra spreadsheet of vocabulary that has to do with things like expressing an opinion and also the words we use to describe music, both whether it's lyrics or a chorus or genre or all those things. So that's going to be Wednesday's class to talk about music. Whether you choose to share it or not is up to you. Next week, again, remember that we're going to be at 6 p.m. Israel time next Monday, where we're going to talk about Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day that'll be finishing up, Yom Haatzmaut, the ensuing Independence Day, and we're going to talk about and share the general words we use in modern Hebrew to talk about us, Israel, Aliyah, Zionism, all the things that comprise these days, these very heavy, important days in Israeli society. We're going to go through all those words together because some of them directly translate to what we use, like Aliyah. Some of them don't. The simple ones, how do we say Zionism? How do we say civil society? All sorts of things like that we're going to talk about next week. So remember, we're going to start at 6 p.m. next week. For everyone else, first off, please look at our YouTube channel. We have all those classes up there just for you to watch. This one will be up in the next day or two. If you want to sign up for any of our further classes, just go to our landing page. It's at nbn.org.il/cafe-oleh. You can also see it. We read it in the chat here as well. If you don't have it, you should also get a prompt in the reminder emails for Cafe Oleh on Monday. Other than that, Toda rabba, thank you all for joining. Those of you who want to stick around, I will play Hurricane now because there was a request for me to play it. And we will see you either this coming Wednesday for Cafe Oleh Conversations, talking about music, or next week at the special time of 6 p.m. Local Israel time. Toda rabba. And in the meantime, let me put on Hurricane for those who have not seen it or want a reminder of this year's Israel's contestant in Eurovision. And remember that Eden Golan also participated in one of these national contests. It was obviously in the context of October 7th, so it was very difficult. It was very contentious, by the way, also to have a song contest, as much as in years past, Israel was prepared to create its own internal decision-making process through Khan, right? Israel's entry is produced by the public broadcasting service. So in the UK, for example, it's the BBC. In Israel, it's Khan. For you Americans, think about it that it would have to be PBS to be broadcasting and producing it. So it's a little interesting pop culture created by PBS on a global level, but one of the reasons why the US does not participate. This is Israel's entry for this year.
Writer of my symphony, play with me, look into my eyes and see. People walk away but never say goodbye. Someone stole the moon tonight, took my light. Everything is black and white. Who's the fool who told you boys don't cry? Hours and hours and powers. Life is no game, but it's ours. While the time goes wild, every day I'm losing my mind, holding on in this mysterious ride, dancing in the storm. I got nothing to hide. Take it out and leave the world behind. Baby, promise me you'll hold me again. I'm still broken from this hurricane. This hurricane. Living in a fantasy, ecstasy. Everything is meant to be. We shall pass, but love will never die. Hours and hours and powers. Life is no game, but it's ours. Wild, the time goes wild. Every day I'm losing my mind, holding on in this mysterious ride, dancing in the storm. I got nothing to hide. Take it out and leave the world behind. Baby, promise me you'll hold me again. I'm still broken from this hurricane. This hurricane. This לא צריך מילים גדולות, רק תפילות, אפילו אם קשה לראות, תמיד אתה משאיר לי אור אחד קטן.
Hard for me not to cry listening to that song. If you, again, look, it's written specifically in the context of October 7th. It's highly encouraged you to watch it over if you don't get it. Between the people dancing in the field, being the Nova Festival, to the uprooted tree, to the black and white images being underground. There's a lot of power in that song, as well as the last line is in Hebrew. I leave it to you to translate it. It's easy enough Hebrew. I think all of us can translate it. Certainly on repeat, and we wish Eden Golan not only best of luck Thursday night when she first performs it live, but also that she and the entire Israeli production team stays safe in a very dangerous city, unfortunately, in Europe for Jews and Israelis, Malmö, Sweden, where it's taking place this year. With that, again, toda rabah, thank you all for joining. Those of you who join us for our conversation class, see you on Wednesday. Otherwise, see you all next week, 6 p.m. Israel time for Cafe Oleh. Until then, lehitraot. Take care.